remaining 3 members returned to the studio to produce Ultra, the singles 86 to 98, and Exciter. Gareth was involved in the early stages of Exciter, working from Martin's home studio.
And then at that stage we needed to get heavyweight production in to finish the album, and Daniel and the band found Mark Bell from LFO, who's also a Björk producer and a huge Depeche Mode fan actually, and we had a little session at Rack Studios for a couple of weeks where the band got to know Mark and Mark got to know the band, and that all went off very well.
Mark had previously remixed the track Home from Depeche's Ultra album and was typical of Daniel's ability to choose cutting-edge producers.
He was seeking out a lot of these underground sort of remixing people perhaps in the early days, although they were actually involved themselves in the early remixes. So that whole remix culture is something that kind of came later. And I suppose you could say that they were quite innovative in being one of the first groups to see the sort of benefits of remixing tracks for the dance floor. And their kind of music lended itself to that, being electronic in the early days.
It's funny because although there's been a decline on the surface, there's definitely not a decline in practice. In fact, most of the records that are made today in the pop charts are made by electronic instruments, but when you see people on video or on TV, they're all playing their guitar, which is sampled, they're playing their drums, which are sampled, and that's the state of music today, you know. We're one of the bands that say, you know, we want to do it, we want to show people that we make music that way, and we do that live as well that way, you know. In fact, what's quite exciting in England at the moment is all this house music, which is really popular, and that comes straight from what we've been doing really in the last 7 or 8. In fact, journalists are shocked when they ask all these bands who they like and who they listen to, and they say us and say, what, you know.
They're really good at finding people who would remix their songs and do something unique with them, whether that be extending it to like a 12-minute wig out or just completely changing the vibe of it. I mean, you can listen to something like In Your Room, and the album version is quite straightforward and it's got a slow build up to it. But if you listen to the single version, it's really dancey and it's got like a real hook to it. So I think in terms of their remix strategy, they've always been pretty spot on.
25 years on, and with 40 million album sales, how have Depeche Mode attained such phenomenal success?
I guess tonally, you know, Depeche Mode have had a whole range of different sounds across their albums. Speak and Spell is very pure electronic, and Violator is kind of, to me, sounds very pure electronic, you know. But then Songs of Faith and Devotion is almost like a rock band with loads of live sounding drums and lots of guitars all over it. And they all have their own appeal, you know, to me and to the fans.
It was just a big learning curve really, because it's been so varied since the first album, to the point of Enjoy the Silence. The difference in music and tone and all those kind of things was just quite immense.
We've really worked hard to try and move on always a little bit from what we've done before in the past, and you know, we've never really sat back and gone, you know, this is what we do and let's just roll with it, you know, for as long as we can.
And that's another part of Depeche Mode's appeal. It's never mainstream at that time. There's always something that sets it apart. It's never part of the flow. It's always something alternative.
I just think it goes back to they seem to have a really strong work ethic. A lot of their albums, you hear about them putting in all manner of hours just to get like one sound on one song. So they generally did seem to sort of push themselves to be better, because nobody expected anything of them, because they're just like this little synth pop band from Essex. So I think that whole underdog feeling really spurred them on.
They make a new world every time they make a record. That's one of the things that appeals to me.
A lot of people say, you know, how much have you changed over the years and things. I really can't say. All I know is that technology's improved a lot since we made our first album. We've matured as people. We've all sorts of things, you know. Martin's songwriting's got better. In every way, we've improved, I think, you know. Although we still really like the first record, you can see that there is a general change in every record. a lot of people think we sound the same, but if you actually listen through the singles all the way along, there is a gradual change. But you can't change from one point to another point in 6 months or something. It's got to be gradual.
Because their UK fan base seems to have stayed steady at a certain size for years now. I mean, I think Depeche Mode, off the top of my head, have released something like 9 or 10 studio albums. A couple of compilation albums and a remix album recently. Every single one of them's flawlessly gone into the top 10.
Most of our fans are crazy, they're so dedicated. They'll go out on day one and buy the records. They are fanatical.
For a band that started with 3 synths and a tape machine, Depeche Mode are selling out stadium gigs, while their contemporaries take part in 80s throwback tours.
It does surprise me in a way when you think of the bands that were out at that time, and I think that's surprising because there were so many bands then, excellent bands like ABC that are now doing Human League, who are now doing these 1980s sort of tour things, and I look at that. And then I look at Depeche and think that it is incredible that they are still going on their own right.
Album-wise, I don't think they've ever had a flop, certainly in UK terms. But the US is a different matter because they weren't even really recognised, I'd say, nationally in the US until 1990, when the Violator album broke through. This was on the back of the next tour after the first tour, where they managed to sell out the Rose Bowl in California. So I think that's about their 6th or 7th album, I forget off the top of my head.
The shy teenagers who signed a record deal with a handshake and were self-managed have survived where few expected them to.
Whereas Depeche Mode always managed to, circumnavigate that whole sort of production machine, if you like, and to their benefit. And I think that's one of the major factors that explains why they're still around today, 25 years later.
We have been very, very lucky that our careers lasted so long, and to be more popular now than when we started, is incredible.
From perfect throwaway pop to unique-sounding dirty electronic rock. And now with their new, eagerly awaited album, Depeche Mode are stronger than ever.